and now we're scrambling. I know I've been posting a ton of videos on the chopper and pretty much told all of you guys that I will have that Ironhead Chopper done for the show in March, which gives me a month to rebuild, do everything else. I started looking. I'm having a couple concerns with that. Not that I don't think I can do it, I just don't think it's the most responsible thing to do at this current juncture when this motor's still apart. I have an Evo chopper to do. I have an Ironhead frame that was a perfect roller that's now taken apart. Lots of issues there. So I am trying to figure out the best way to kind of approach moving forward. Which means, here's roughly the thought. This is the perks of having an ADD brain. If you have ADD or ADHD and can't stop focusing on stupid things that don't ever go away, good for you. If you do, this is what I'm going through. I have a complete Ironhead motor here. I have another Ironhead motor here with freshly coated cases in gray, because these gray cases are going to mate up to this cylinder. I got the head, I don't remember where I just set it, but I'll do a quick mock-up at the end of this video for roughly what this motor is going to look like once I get the head put back on this Honda. There's only so many hours in the day, and I'm doing this around 2 jobs, so kind of a pain in the ass. But I'm laying all this out. In my head, I envisioned stock blasted aluminum colored cases, freshly coated cylinders and heads, and then just all the aluminum stuff on the outside, so aluminum primary. I do have chrome rockers. There's the head. I do have chrome rockers. They're super beat up because this wasn't a fire, so this is all soot and ash. If you can't see what just came off on my hands. Those are chrome underneath there. So I got really nice 900 heads with nice chrome that will clean up really, really nicely, I think. Might not be show chrome, but for what I appreciate and enjoy, that's exactly what I want. Got the crank bearing pressed back on, ready to start reassembly. So my goal for tonight's video is actually to prep the cases. This might turn into a tomorrow video. I know I got a couple Ironhead projects going on right now, so to put this in perspective, here is the chopper that came about when I found a good deal on a titled frame on the internet. Ended up getting a couple more parts for that, but here's currently where she's sitting. I do have longer fork tubes that I'm going to be throwing on here. Also potentially have a 21 mil, exact same wheel, but a 21 outer that I might run instead too. Just kind of seeing what plays out with that. This is a crusty swap meet motor that I got for, I don't know, less than $100 with the Arlen Ness frame upstairs. So I have that one. Did not have a rear motor mount, but I picked one up when I was up at Old Iron Parts Co. Thank you again, man. Appreciate it. So now, here's kind of what we're looking at. We got frame stuff to do. I got to make a fender mount, make a sissy bar, make a seat. Well, actually found that seat upstairs, so I'm not going to end up doing that. But my plan was doing a big old king queen seat with a tall sissy, you know, typical old school chopper, but I don't have the time or the money to send any of that out right now. So this is the seat that we're going to use because it's free and it was upstairs and hugs this frame perfectly. So there's the chopper seat. I do need to get it on ordering a new tank because I'm not a fan of that, but haven't decided what exactly I want to run. However, my issue now is, one, I'd like to get the motor in there. Realistically, I'd like to throw a loaded trans in, even if it's not fully assembled. But at least so I have the shaft coming out, I can throw a sprocket on it and dial in the rear wheel stuff here, because all of the fender mounts and the spacing is going to be dependent on where the motor needs to go. So I want to make sure the driveline squared away. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and at least get these cases roughly bolted together. In order to do that, I need a rear motor mount. So here's the extra cases I had. Now that I have the mount, we can go through and assemble these. I figured I'd make a short little one here for you. This will sit like so. Well, if you put the cases together, this will not fit. So you have to kind of assemble them together. And like I said, I don't have any of the hardware for the case bolts yet. But I do have the rear mount. So what we're going to do is pound these together. Obviously, this is not the best workbench for this. It is all we need. So there we go. You got cases roughly set together. Those studs will hold them in place. I really should have brought some hardware, but that's not really what we're going for here. Let me turn you guys around a little bit and we'll throw this motor in. Now we got cases, which will land somewhere back here. I'll grab some miscellaneous fasteners. I'll just grab some rough hardware and get the back half of this mounted in. On the rear motor mount, I don't care what size hardware I have. If it's not the right ones, it doesn't really matter at this point. This is strictly for mock-up purposes. But you have 4 holes in the frame. 2 of these are threaded, so these are fine threads on the bottom, but it's through bolts here. And then you have your motor mount bolts. So we're just, again, rough assembly. So I'm just grabbing some 3/8 hardware here. Coarse thread here. It is fine thread on the bottom motor mount, and that's actually a bolt, not a bolt and nut combo. Top one's going to be a nut and bolt setup. But this will at least glue the cases together. Obviously these are way too long, but it's all I got right now. It'll keep the case halves together, like so. Then we will grab some hardware here. So, one more bolt on the other side. And I'll just zip this in with 2 nuts on the back side. Don't care what the hardware looks like right now. I don't care that they're too long. I don't care about the washers. Just strictly mock-up. I'm not going to tighten that yet because I also have from Jeremiah at Old Iron Parts Co. the upper motor mounts. So let me unbag these and lay this out. Just open the bag. Let me tell you. Got all 4 of the upper motor mount, or front motor mount bolts. Spacers too. What a guy. So let's dig some of these out. I think I'm short 1 nut. But that's okay. Now we get to figure out how all of this works. I've also never had all of this together yet. Oh, I'm not short a nut. I forgot the ones on the plate. But that makes it nice and easy for me to know what goes where. One of the reasons I didn't fully tighten up the back side of that is because this is much easier to do and assemble when those are loose. Try this one more time. So this bolt is the one that goes in between underneath the generator shell right here, so that sits on the inside of the frame. But I need both plates on at the same time. So this, sorry, I'm looking at the chopper parts of this. Looks to me like, so these will go in like this. But I'm not sure how this one's going to actually work. This is a custom frame, so there's a lot of questionable things I'm not positive on this one. said, all the motor mounts on this frame are TIG welded in. Frame's done really, really well. I just need to verify fitment on a ton of things here. So I will snug this one down first. It's not crazy tight, but just so it's got some tension on it and is sitting where it's supposed to be. And I'll slide the rest of these in roughly. I'm not positive with where these mounts are. I might need to do some custom spacer things on these moving forward. But that's what we're testing right now. So, it does look like I'm going to need one spacer. Or to cut these down a little bit. Because positioning wise this looks good, but that nose cone's hitting the frame, which I don't want. I also don't know if that's because this back isn't tightened down either. I don't know if this is going to help or hurt. It's close. It's really close. Alright, let me bring you guys around. You can see what I'm looking at. I don't know how well this is going to show up. Here is the motor. Rear mounts are tight on the top. Here's the front. So we got the motor mount here, here. Everything lines up. The holes are all good. The only issue I got now is, one, you usually run a spacer in here, from here to here. So that's where this would come in. It's way too long there. Not a big deal. I can turn down some new ones for that. But then on the bottom, it's really, really kind of goofy in terms of where this needs to be. I got a gap. I got a gap in between the motor mount and this plate. I don't know, probably 1/4 inch or so. And then on the other side, we have the same gap here. So I might have to research that one a little bit. I'm not positive exactly how that's supposed to go, but to me, this is not right. Unless I messed it up. I might have the motor end too far over. No, I can't, because then the rear mounts wouldn't line up. Yeah, I'm going to have to do some investigation on this one. Okay, so I got the motor mounts in. Let me show you what we're working with. I just said, as you guys saw, I was having some clearance issues. The back mount lines up good. Happy with that one. Lower mounts should line up. The holes are all in the right place. I can see straight through on the threads. Not too worried about that. The front ones, these are just a stock set of motor mounts. These line up. Every one of these bolts line up perfect. No issues there. What I do have an issue with, however, is the nose cone. The way that this frame is kind of built and the way it's all sitting, nose cone is just barely grazing this. Couple of thou. It's way closer than I want it to be. Again, it's not fully bolted or fully put together, so there might be a little bit of wiggle room that would give me that clearance, but at the same time, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to kind of move the mounts around and make that clear. I don't know how easy that would be either. Or do I just shave a couple thou off the front nose cone and send it? It's not the preferred way of doing it by any means, but there's a good amount of meat there, and that section that I got a clearance is very, very small. So we'll see, depending on where everything kind of goes once we get the rest of the parts on there. But on the motor mount, you guys can see, hopefully, I got like probably a 1/4 inch of a gap down here in between the plate and the mount. This one's flush on the case here like it's supposed to, and flush on the case here like it's supposed to be. So those are okay. The front one, the spacers I have do not clear, and this looks like it wants to be kind of kicked in a little as we come to the front. So I don't know why that's not necessarily lining up the correct way. I got a big gap over on this side. That lower mount is kind of goofy. It's just a tab welded off. Big space here. This one's a through bar. So the only other thing I can think of is maybe if I shaved a little bit off of this, I'd be able to kick this over a little tiny bit more. I don't know. Things to figure out as we progress through building choppers. That last little thing before I get going here today. Chopper oil tank. Couple options. It's skinny enough where it will actually fit back here. If I wanted to run something here in between the fender, I do have the room for it. That would actually make oil line routing really, really clean and simple. Other option, you can run it up here and fill that dead space on the Ironhead motor. So probably going to bring the cylinders back over here, get those at least laid on here and assemble a no internal motor and start laying out what's going to go where and make some final decisions as we progress. Big thing's going to be figuring out that motor situation. Thinking about it, I might pull over a little bit more if I shave that other motor mount side down just a smidge. We'll see. Another day's project. I just got done running around doing a bunch of errands. I did not have a chance to film what I was working on earlier. You'll get the video of the Ironhead motor stuff. This is the xlch crank down here from the fire bike. This motor is most likely going to be going into the new chopper project. I got more progress on this, way closer to having this one done, because cylinders and all the other primary stuff that's now holding carburetors are all tucked into that corner. That trans is good as far as I'm aware. We'll find out when we actually get it all back together, but everything was working. It's beautiful out here. It was whopping 4 degrees 2 days ago, and now it's like 40, and the Falcon's thawing out, so I can see blue on the car again. That's cool. Either way, went over to the buddy's shop. I was telling you guys that the pinion gear was all messed up on this, or not the pinion gear, but not the pinion gear, but the crank bearings on the left side. Those were messed up. The inner one was actually in good shape, but they're a match set. The outer one, when I took this apart, was kind of messed up. Went over to his shop because he has way better pullers than I do to get that pinion off, so he yanked that off, and then I just pressed this back on. I didn't film any of it, but now here's the old bearing that was on there with the original spacer that was also on there, and the new bearing right here, all pressed, ready to go. I have the other 2 new bearings still sitting in the box, and again, with that, do not forget your spacer. Do not mix up your parts. It is imperative that the bearings and the spacer go together with the motor. So I still have the race, I have the other bearing and the correct spacer together on the new Timken box. That's one of the few parts I won't skimp out on. It's a $100 bearing. It sucks, but it's your crank bearing. It's very important. So quick little update for you. If you're enjoying the build videos, let me know. That's awesome. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're really interested. Going to try and finish up one of these motors pretty quick here, which means I now need to bring that other cylinder head back to work and hit the flow bench so I can get some confirmed numbers that I said forever ago when I started doing the porting on the heads for this motor. We'll get that wrapped up at some point this week. That'll be coming out later. I don't know when you'll see it, this week or week and a half. I don't know how long it takes. With the show coming up and scrambling to try and build a chopper from scratch, well, when I started looking at the frame, tons of issues. One, motor wasn't really fitting all that well in that frame because of the way the mounts are kind of set up, so I got to figure out a ton of things on the frame. It's all finish welded, TIG welded, everything's done, but the bushings that run through, not bushings, but the little pieces that the bolts go through in between the rails, the front frame rails, they're not at all squared up to where the motor wants to be when I tighten up and snug down the rear 4 motor mounts. I was also just looking at that. Every Ironhead that I have seen tend to be slightly offset to one side. So here's your motor mounts down here on the cast plate. Hopefully you can see this. It's not that bright in here, but hopefully you can see it. that plate is welded dead nuts in the middle of the down tube on that frame. I think it actually needs to get cut off and shifted over. That in and of itself is a crucial part of the entire build, so I don't want to skimp out and rush through that. If it takes me a week, 2 weeks to cut that plate off, reposition it, make sure everything squares up and the front motor mounts actually work the way they're supposed to, I'm okay with that. But not when I have a month to build the entire rest of the bike. I have no foot controls on that because it is a chopper frame. And I was looking it over again today. I think it's actually a scratch-built frame, minus the neck section. But stock Ironhead has foot peg mounts off the frame, kickstand mounts off the frame. Those are the easy ones. Foot pegs aren't that bad either. I also have no way to run any sort of brake master cylinder, so I'm going to have to fab up all the brackets and all of the foot controls. All of those, I'm just not opposed to doing it. I will most likely still do them, but they add up in terms of time if I'm giving myself a month and a half to build a bike from scratch. Especially when there's also a motor to go through and build, and this Honda to finish and start putting together, and another bike that was a perfect roller until I started stealing parts off of it. So, new thought. The roller that I had, rebuilt 18-inch wheel. I know it's all crusty and beat up, but it's an 18 with a fully rebuilt drum, new pads, new bearings, new the whole 9 yards on that one prior. Started that before I started this channel. But the roller was done. I got that same 35 mil front end, unshaved, unmolested, with a Hallcraft mini drum. I think that's the way I should go. Why reinvent the wheel when all I have to do is just put together the bike that I planned on doing anyway? The only downside to that is I wanted to do a ton of R&R research and tear down and design on this ported cylinder, ported head setup. But I have a brand new set of jugs, brand new pistons, brand new heads. Everything on this is redone. Trans is all redone. Substantially quicker to get that done, and then I can focus on the aesthetics. I own a powder coating shop, if you didn't know, or just coming to this channel, so I want to push the boundaries of powder a little bit more in terms of doing the chopper stuff. So that's kind of where we're at. I think Ironhead frame is going to get torn apart all the way, because we're now at that point. I didn't expect to have to take the motor out of that when I bought it, which is why I was so adamant about keeping everything the same. Well, now that's going to get completely blasted apart, but I'm going to bring it to the shop in the night, tomorrow or the day after. The only other things I had on that, I have all the parts, it's just a matter of doing the final fab. I got the axle, or swing arm. It was set up for a big twin. This one's got a Fat Bob style fender on it. So I got to make some spacers. Then, what do I need? I need spacers. I got to make the brackets to go through, the fender brackets / sissy bar brackets, which are just going to be a, vertical cross style. I think I've shown it in a couple of the other videos on this bike. But I have all the plates done. I have everything ground. I just got to make the spacers, weld everything, burn it in, and go from there. But then we'll have tank, fender to coat, frame to coat, and everything else. That's where we're at now. Rethinking everything. We'll let you know how it goes in a couple days when we figure it all out.